excited that you guys are all joining us today. We are in the second week of our Enneagram conversation series. It's actually the third because we had kind of a prequel to test some things out with some folks that were generous enough to sit with us on the first week. But this is the second week that we get to host like curated conversations with hosts. And so we're super excited about it today. Just real quick, as we just let a few more people jump in, I was listening this morning to a sermon from Expressions 58 on belonging and how we set the table for people who are different than us, because that's what Jesus did. And so I love getting to be a part of this particular conversation. I'm not a parent. Bethany's not a parent. We're really cool aunts, but not parents, really cool aunts. And so I just love that I'm going to get to sit and take a posture of learning today, and knowing that like there are lots of you that we can just glean wisdom from. And so we just really appreciate Amy hosting today and just all of you joining us. So for those of you who haven't come to one of these before, kind of the layout of the hour is that we're going to spend probably about 20-25 minutes hearing from Amy, and I'll introduce her in a second. And then we'll spend about 20 to 25 minutes in breakout conversations because we can do that on Zoom. And don't be afraid, that's the best part, is the breakout conversations. We have a few discussion questions, and it just gives us an opportunity to have community. I'm in Honduras. There's not a lot of people here who speak English. And so getting to sit and have conversations about the Enneagram, I was born in the right century, in the right decade to be able to do this. So I'm super excited about those. Then we'll all come back out of the breakout conversations that'll last for about 20 to 25 minutes. And we'll wrap it up with a commission, and we'll let Amy finish out by telling you a little bit about what she does. What we're going to do a little different today, and this is totally for anybody who wants to, we're going to open up and leave the Zoom call running for an extra 30 minutes after our initial hour, just in case you want to connect or continue on having conversations that didn't quite finish in the discussion breakouts. And so just so that you know, it's totally optional if you want to hang out and continue, or if you need to go, that's okay too. So with that, did anybody who was here last week do their commission on creativity? I did one where I painted and broke out some watercolors, which is the only craft that I had available in my house, but it was fun. It was a nice little break to get to do it, and I was challenged to create for myself and not others. So it was fun. Did anybody else get a chance to do it? Anybody?
I did a drawing, but it wasn't in the designated, like, wake up and have 15 minutes of silence and then create something. It wasn't in that. It was at like 2:30 in the morning when I couldn't sleep. And I was like, oh, like I have something that I can draw right now.
Oh, I love that. That's fine. I don't think creativity has a recipe for it anyway. And if there is, somebody ought to bottle that up and we'd buy it, right? Anybody else? Anybody else? No? That's okay. So we're going to have a commission. Bethany did. Are you unmuted?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
And I didn't post about it, so that's my bad. But I did do some watercolor painting as well, and some hand lettering. I'm trying to get better at that.
That's fun. That's fun. I'm excited to see what that is when you're done. So anyways, with that, we'll go ahead and transition, and we'll introduce to you Amy. Amy Wicks is an Enneagram coach. She hosts an awesome podcast called Simply Wholehearted, and we have just gotten the privilege of getting to know her. We've had several Zoom calls with her over the last couple of months. She is a delight, and we're excited to hear from her today. So, Amy, transition to you.
Thank you. Well, I am thrilled to be here, and I just adore Beth and Amanda. I know that if any of you have met them, had any sort of interaction with them, they're easy to love. And I love the mission of Bone and Marrow and getting to partner with them and to offer things like this. But I also obviously really think the Enneagram is awesome. My friends joke about the fact if you are a friend of mine or you hang out with me for any short amount of time, you know, be it more than 10 minutes. Oh, I'm going to stop my notifications. Sorry. Then just beware, because Amy's going to talk to you about the Enneagram. Like, it just happens. It just flies out of my mouth before I can even stop it. So I'm so grateful that I get the opportunity to share on an ongoing basis. And I want to give a shout out to Danielle, by the way. She and I got to meet. I spoke at her mom's group like 3 years ago, and we've kept in touch. And I think we've even run into one another at a Target close by. And it's so fun. I just wanted to say hey to you, and thanks for being here. Today, I'm going to specifically talk about what it looks like to use our skill set called stances. And stances are a shorter word for interpersonal communication style. Say that 5 times fast, right? So we say stances, but a lot of times people see the word stances or hear it and they're like, huh? It's not a common term that we use every day. If you spend any amount of time in the Enneagram, though, you are familiar with the term. What I like about the stances is that it helps us, similar to what the triads do, and it breaks up the Enneagram in 3 sets of 3s. It's just really helpful as we're talking about all 9 types. There's so many nuances and differences, but there's actually different similarities in the triads, in the stances, and things that are connected together that help us break down and have a conversation about parenting, which is so broad and so big, and be able to have a conversation about it in 20 minutes and have actionable content that you can use in your home today, or you can use via phone and FaceTime or Zoom, right? Because some of you may be connecting with your kids who are far. And even if your kids are grown, this is wonderful content to help you understand a little bit better how to connect to them and how to navigate that relationship. And if you aren't a parent yet, I want you to know that these tips and this insight will help you not only prepare for parenting, but help you in your marriage and help you with your friends, whether you're just connecting on FaceTime or someday when we're having barbecues and we're hanging out by the pool again. So with that in mind, I've got a lot of content that I want to give you in a little bit amount of time. But because I know it's a lot to take in, both Beth and Amanda have prepared some content to send to you to follow up this conversation, not only in the groups, but also in printed format. And of course, I'll be talking about it later, but you can find a lot of what I'm giving you, at least the inroad to it, on easyenneagram.com if you want just my Enneagram information. And my podcast is the Simply Wholehearted podcast. All right, so as we break down the 3 sets of 3, the stances, we're going to be talking about the withdrawn stance, the dutiful stance, and the assertive stance. Now, you may have heard different terms for them. These are general terms. I will refer to maybe some of the other ways that you've heard about these, but most importantly, what's really great is to hear the stances for themselves individually. If you can, you may already be very confident of the Enneagram type that you lead with, and that is great. But I want you to approach these stances in a different way. Try to take out what you have thought about these stances or what you think your type is in relation to these stances, and just learn about the stances themselves. Because the beauty of the Enneagram, while it gives so much insightful information for our heart and our spiritual growth and our relationships, the benefit in relationships is beginning to understand what our differences are, and not just tolerate them, but be able to celebrate them and be able to see what other viewpoints that people are coming from, whether it's our kids or our parents or our friends. So the first one that I'm going to talk about is the dutiful stance. You may have also heard this referred to as the dependent stance. And as I give this high view of the 3, we're going to hit on 3 tips. And if I had a slideshow, I would, have like 3 points here that I would show for each stance. And then we're going to go back and revisit each of those and dive in a little bit deeper for the parenting specific ideas and relational specific ideas. So the dutiful stance, the best way to sum this up is that they move along with people to get their needs met. They actually hope to earn autonomy by following rules or procedures or people's expectations. All right, that feels safe to them. That feels like if they do those things, they will gain closeness with the people that they love or the people that they hope will love them. Now, when you're under stress, and I think we all can raise both hands when we're under stress, the struggle there is that you might move from principles that you normally adhere to, and you might move to more perfectionism or obligation towards others. So instead of staying true to the principles that you know, that you believe and you care about, your boundaries and things like that, in order, because of the stress and because sometimes stress causes us to just grasp in life in general, you might see the behaviors that look more perfectionistic and that are motivated from obligation. Now, sometimes those in the dutiful stance, they shut down their wants and desires in order to be loved and accepted. There might be a few of you who could raise your hand to that, right? A few of you who are familiar and intimately acquainted with that struggle. And in general terms, I think the dutiful stance, they struggle with boundaries needed in parenthood. And we could actually relate that to boundaries needed in most relationships. But for them, that's gonna look different for each person, what those boundaries need to be and what those boundaries that get broken. But if you kind of think about that as a parent, and if you fall in the dutiful stance, the boundaries are gonna be really tough. All right, we're gonna come back to the dutiful stance and talk a little bit more about it. But now I'm gonna give you a little bit of insight about the withdrawing stance. And notice I'm specifically not assigning types to these stances yet. This is an effort to kind of, again, like, let's just look at it, examine it for themselves, and not necessarily relate it to a type, but see how we relate to it, or how we know maybe our kids, our husband, our friends, how they relate to it. All right, the withdrawing types, they tend to move away from people. And they do this because they fear about not having their needs met. So instead of going along with or going out, they withdraw. When the withdrawing types are under stress, they tend to retreat to an inner world of an imagination and their own little making, or they completely zone out. This is understandable. This is how they best cope. This is how they withdraw and maybe get the inner resolution that they need right now that they can't get from anywhere or anything else. But this can be hard when you're in relationship with a withdrawn type, because they're pulling away and retreating to their inner world, and you're like, wait a minute, what about me? But that's what they're going to do and try to find some resolution. It can be a good thing. It can be a superpower, but in relationships, it needs to be understood so it doesn't become hurtful. It's really hard and challenging for the withdrawing types to sum up or to summon up the energy and to deal with the outside world, especially when it's stressful. All right. Given a typical social situation or social situation out of their control, that already is something that they're not going to be really thrilled about. So now more than ever in this situation, which is totally outside of their comfort zone, they will tend to withdraw even more. The withdrawing types, they tend to struggle with the intimacy that parenting requires. Parenting requires so much one-on-one. Whether you have a kid whose love language is physical touch, they are just around you 24/7. If you have a little baby and a little toddler and maybe a couple of them and they're hanging off of you and you're a withdrawing type, whew, you just want to go hide and lock yourself in a closet to give yourself some space. I see a couple laughing here. I'm wondering, Katie, I have to look here on the comments to see what type you are. But that's real, and you do, just as the dutiful types need to figure out their boundaries. The withdrawing types, they need to understand when is a good time to withdraw so they don't feel like doing it all the time and to get recharged. All right, the assertive stance, they move towards people to get their needs met. the poor assertive types are going just about crazy in this whole quarantine thing, to not get to be with their people and not get to go out in the world. It's killing them. Not that I can relate or anything, but they are used to going towards others to get their needs and their feelings and their love bucket filled up. And so a text and FaceTime and Zoom, well, that's almost more draining because it's so much effort to try to get the same experience as you do get in person. So I'm preaching to myself here. Now, when they are under stress, and again, we're all experiencing that right now, they might tend to expand their sense of self rather than backing down and withdrawing. So as the assertive word says, they might be the ones rushing out into the world. What can I offer? What can I give? What can I do? What can I say? How can I make a difference, right? Whether it's from the point of justice or the point of coming across and as successful, or just getting some of their thrilling needs met in this whole process. So sometimes their struggle is that they're too aggressive when they're interacting with others. In their effort to convince of others of their value or their ideas, they might come across as what some people might say is too much. That might be something an assertive type struggles with because they've heard it. Let's just say, especially if they happen to be married to or in close quarters to withdrawing type. Those are both ends of the spectrum. And so one's trying to get, one's trying to retreat. And, that can be a real struggle. So I have come to realize as I've coached a lot of parents, and these are not just insights that I've read, but actually insights that I've gathered in working with lots of moms. But the assertive stance struggles the most with the mundane of parenting. So just to review, the dutiful stance is going to struggle with the boundaries. The withdrawing stance is going to struggle with the constant intimacy. And the assertive stance is going to struggle the most with the mundane of parenting. It's just not as thrilling and rewarding and energizing as their life that they once had or experienced. And while parenting and motherhood is a wonderful gift, I personally have learned to embrace the mundane and to see it as rewarding and special, but also do a few other things that help the mundane not feel too difficult. So that's kind of a summary, a high view of those types. So now we're going to go back through those and we'll talk about the types associated with them. And I'll give you some specific ideas as a parent and as you're relating to others of what you can be mindful of, and also what your strengths are as you interact with those that you love. Now, the dutiful stance, and if you hadn't already figured out, those are the types that lead as a 1, a 2, and a 6. Their orientation to time, and this is what's so fun, is that when you look at the stances, you can actually understand what a person's natural orientation to time. And what do I mean by that? I'll give give an explanation as I explain for each one. So the dutiful stance, their orientation time is present, which means that they excel with being in the moment. They are very aware of what's right in front of them and what they have to do right now. We'll talk about how the others are oriented in the end. We'll talk about how those compare and to just think about that in nature of relationship. And so the idea that you who leads as a 1, 2, or 6, that you are gifted at being in the present, that is a gift for your kids. You're not too stuck about what was yesterday, and you're not too stuck about what's going tomorrow. You have a superpower of being in the moment and making the most of that opportunity. But one of the downsides of that is that when you're training your children, thinking about in terms of discipline or showing them how to do something new for the first time, whether it be tying their shoes or driving their car, or maybe even that you're coming in as grandma helping your daughter or your son become a parent, right? Because we're made to train and teach and to show what it is that we know, or maybe we wish someone had taught us. So when you're training your children, remember the fact that your orientation to time is the present, and the person that you're communicating to may not be. You also might have a tendency to overtalk about the current situation. Your child or spouse or your friend, they might be ready to move on like forever ago. All right, already. I'm done hearing about what I did wrong or what I need to do, or, all of that sort of stuff. But you're going to keep talking and talking and talking and talking. And I see some head nods, and that's great, because you will thoroughly explain the content, but you just need to know and get the cues of when it's time to move on, and when the person that you're interacting with, they've gotten what they needed, and it's time to let it go and move on to the next thing. And also for, just from two things, either your child is going to need to move on ahead and being allowed to look to the future, or your child, if they're in the withdrawn stance, they might need to be able to retreat a little bit and regroup before they are faced with the situation again. So just a little side note, a fun tip from the children's perspective. You may not know what type your child leads with, but if you start investigating and using the stances with your adult relationships in your life, then you can begin to observe your children and see, oh, I think they are definitely future oriented and assertive, or they're the type that needs to be able to withdraw a little bit, and sending them to their room, it's not a punishment. It's exactly what they need to do. So just kind of a fun little nugget there. All right. So it's another really important thing for those of you who are present focused and who are dutiful. Don't allow the demands of the present. We have a lot of demands to snuff out the dreams for your future. Okay. There's still future, and you have a good and beautiful future ahead of you. And don't let it negate the power of the past as well. There's something to be learned. There's something important and valuable, and something to be remembered from the past to help us inform our future and to inform our present. When you learn to celebrate that you offer the gift of being present, you can also learn to implement the boundaries. Remember the boundaries that we need, because we need them to implement the training, the rest you need, and the time to dream of your future and deal with your past. That's why the boundaries are so important. It's not a matter of like, oh, well, you can't go in this room and you can't do that room, and I'm only going to do this between this time and that time. It's about taking care of yourself in a way that helps you be the parent that you want to be. All right, for those of you in with the withdrawing stance or withdrawn stance, those are the types that lead as a 4, a 5, and a 9. And their orientation, or your orientation to time, is past. And this is a powerful gift, friends. It's a gift because you help us, the rest of us, remember that what we've already experienced is valuable to our present and to our future. That we have things to learn from our past, that we don't want to just sweep it under the rug and forget about it. But it's the past is there for us to hold and to examine and to honor and to learn from, to help us to be the people that we desire to be, that will better the world, better our family, better our relationships. When you are training your children, those who are oriented to the past and who are in the withdrawing stance, you might have a tendency to bring up past mistakes. You might be in the moment correcting, encouraging, or training in a situation in the moment, but you might go, well, but remember when you did this, this, and this, and then you did this, this, and this, and this? No one wants to hear their past dredged up. While it's important to learn from, as a parent in particular, you get to hold the experiences of the past with your kids when they didn't do it right. And instead of bringing it to their attention in a way of, well, you did this, this, and this, you have the opportunity to have that inform and strengthen the way that you parent them in the moment. Oh, maybe they didn't get it because I didn't explain it well. Or I didn't give them the benefit of the doubt that they had learned the first time. And I was over explaining. Whatever the reason might be in that is that um, you can use that past to help you better explain, but if you use the past in a way that brings about the expectation that they're not going to get it again and that they're going to fail again, or they're not going to do it right, or they're not going to listen, then that doesn't allow the child to move forward or to even to do it well in the present. And then the past no longer has the beauty that it does. It just has shame to it. Does that make sense? I think it's kind of, that's a nuanced and deep thing, but I think it would be really powerful for us if we learn to take what we've learned from the past and hold it well in the future, and not hold it over people in the current present. Now remember too, we tend to remember the negative, not always the positive. And that's where too, as the superpower is in the past, work hard to be thinking about the positive things, the things that your kids do or your spouse did do really well, and use that as a time to bring up, oh, remember when you learned this, and or you thought that this was really hard and you were never going to learn it, but look, you did. And you can use it as a tool of encouragement and empowerment for your kids as they're training along with you in the present tense. Now, for you who are withdrawing type, you can learn to celebrate the fact that you have the wisdom of the past, but you also can give yourself the time to process and withdraw alone from others. There is nothing wrong with that. If you're hiding 24/7 in the closet, there's a problem. You need to learn the time and the spot, and there's nothing wrong with saying, I just need some time to process this. I need some time to think it through, but come on out. And after you're done with that, be willing to process and not just sweep it under the rug, but process what happened, whether verbally or giving the opportunity for a do-over, or to be able to talk through it. It's also really important, especially in times like this, that you need to engage with others who can help you dream about the future and let go of the negative past so you can be fully present in the future, or in the current time. Be fully present here right now for what today has to offer you. For any of us, if we get too far in the future, then we lose sight of what we have today. And if we also get stuck in the past, then we lose sight of what we have today. So that is those in the withdrawing stance. Now, for those of you in the assertive stance, those are the types that lead as a 3, a 7, and an 8. Now, your orientation to time is future. And this is a gift because you help the rest of us remember to dream about the possibilities. Again, dream about, the summer barbecues, and that school will start again in the fall, and, all the things that will be that we miss right now. And this is a gift because you can train your children to remember that they will eventually get it. Just as the past orientation to time can help their children remember that they did get it in the past, you can speak to the future hope that they will eventually learn this, that someday this will just be a memory, and someday they will have mastered this, and someday this won't be a struggle anymore. But you need to be cautious, because you might tend to move too quickly through the training process or even the discipline process and not let your child absorb what they need to absorb. Whether it's within the practical training or the practical discipline, you might be ready to just move on. You got things to do, people to see, places to go, right? Or at least to the living room and the washer machine. And so you just don't want to stay there that long. You're ready to, especially if it has any sort of negative feelings, you're ready to move on past it. So you've got to slow down a little bit, slow down your pace. Whether your kids are assertive or dutiful or withdrawing, they need you to slow your roll a little bit and to focus in on what the needs are right now, and then couple it with what the future possibilities are for them. Your child does need to help to remember how far they've come and matured, not just what needs to be done next. I am totally guilty of this. I have to remember to celebrate my kids' small wins, big wins of like, oh, yeah, I know you've got this before. And I know, I remember when you finally learned that, or yeah, that's right. You don't do that anymore. And that used to be a real struggle, and you have grown and matured. Because I'm always thinking about the next thing that they need to do or to master, or to understand. And when you learn to celebrate that you offer great vision for the future, you can also learn to give yourself time to make the dreams and the plans that liven up the mundane, kind of what I talked about before. Give yourself the time to acknowledge the past, the power of it, and what you've learned from it, the lessons, the wisdom it has to offer. And also, sometimes it's okay to give your dreams a rest so you can be fully present with those that you love. Yes, tomorrow holds incredible hope, but the present holds incredible memories to be, and the gift of connecting, the gift of eye-to-eye contact with those who are in our four walls, and memories to be made and projects to be done right here and right now, not just the future. We want to understand our superpowers and our strengths, and then bring those alongside to what our weaknesses are, so we can be more balanced in our relationships and our parenting, and even in our kindness to yourself. So there is so much more that I would love to talk about Enneagram as it relates to motherhood, to parenting, to ourselves in general. But hopefully some of this stance work, as you begin to investigate for yourself, you begin to observe the world a little bit differently through this lens, and just are able to relate and connect so much better to those that you love.
Yes. Thank you, Amy.
Yeah, totally.
And that was so good. I want to give you a little clap right there. There we go. I learned a new trick. That little clap.
I know, it's so fun, isn't it?
When I learned the Enneagram, it was a while before I learned stances, and stances opened up this entire world to me, time orientation and stances. So for those of you that maybe haven't dug into this very much, there's so much more about this. Sometimes when I think my stance, I'm like, ooh, maybe I'm a 2, maybe I lead with and I start to kind of process through, and the Enneagram is something that's meant to be wrestled with. So I encourage you, if you're going, ooh, like, what is that? Or how do I feel about that? That's okay. Those feelings are good. Let's wrestle together. We really are passionate, about community, introducing you to people in our community like Simply Wholehearted, Amy. But we're passionate about conversations. So we're about to move into that. For those of you that were here last week, you know what that's like. It's not as scary as it sounds at first. I think that's where the gold happens, actually. That is where intentional conversations that'll allow us to celebrate where we're at today, but also encourage us to move and to take the next steps forward in our healing and all of that. So we're going to move into our conversation piece right now. We're going to all go into breakout rooms. And then when we come back, we'll hear a little bit more from Amy on how you can connect with her. So we'll do that, and then we'll also give the commission and some things we can do this week to maybe move forward. All right.